we go. Yo, we made it back. Sorry about that, folks. Hello, China. I'm here. If anybody else is there, sorry about that. I hit a little thing on the side of my mouse, and it wiped out the live chat. And then the next thing, everything went. And many apologies, folks. That's entirely my fault. So I hope somebody's still there. I'll give you a few minutes to catch up. We're near the end of the chapter. So what I'll do is I'll give it a wee minute for everybody to hopefully try and find us. But that was me hitting the wrong on this rather silly mouse. I don't even know it had a button around that side. But yeah, for some reason, whenever this disappears, I have no idea how to get it back. And I didn't want to lose any of your comments. I will, once this is done, I'll basically throw this up. It'll be part 1 and part 2, basically. So there's Babs saying welcome back. Thanks, Babs. I do apologise about that. I even forgot to take my glass with me. Came back with a different one, so there we go. But I'll give our folks a few minutes. But I do apologise. Just one of those things of me being a bit clumsy. Oh, goodness gracious. Hi, Doc. This is a great chapter. You're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Goodness. I'll tell you what, guys, it really did just kind of kick my enthusiasm up a bit, this chapter. I enjoyed the last chapter, but this one really just got me going. And I have to say, just there's a couple of things, I suppose, just in having been through all the books in detail. Been a long time since I've been near Dune Messiah and Children of Dune and God Emperor and Heretics and Heretics, I'll laugh one in Chapter House, you know. And the book that I've hit the most is Dune, to the point where I'm kind of sick of it a wee bit, if you know what I mean. Not sick of it, but I've just done my time on it, if you like. But it really is nice to hit back, you know, Dune Messiah, and especially with the way the setup's going. I think we were talking last week about sort of, well, we didn't really see much of Alia, did we? And Alia's presence, I think, in the book here, it's kind of similar. She's clandestine at the minute. She's mysterious. And she's for that makes her much more interesting. And we're trying to get a sense of Alia in this as well, and a sense of how much of a bit of a Janus aspect these two siblings are. But this ghola character is, I mean, as much as you could say it's a bit. Whenever you first kind of see Hayt, I always got the sense of a bit of a Frankenstein's monster, if you see what I mean, the creature. And it depends on how you kind of think of the eyes. Sometimes the way I think of it, that they're just within the eye. Other times I think when I drew them here, it just depends on how you might think of it. I think I drew them as being quite large and clunky. Well, just for my own little, I tend to doodle characters' eyes a wee bit, but that's how I kind of, where are we? This kind of thing here. You know, he's definitely, it's an interesting thing to bring a character back like this, you know, and there's lots in this chapter. It really is just sort of, you know, and again, when you've got a really powerful protagonist, if you like, such as Paul, and I suppose, you know, and even, you know, a similar, a seemingly more powerful, possibly, you know, the female aspect of the same character with Alia, if you like, that they're almost two sides of this one coin. Yeah, it's just, you know, to create a plot that would work against them. It's one of those things that if you create kind of like the ultimate protagonist, you know, how do you create a threat for such a character, you know? And I like the way that this is built here, but particularly things like the tarot card coming in and stuff like this and how they're going to work. And it kind of it does make sense. But some, again, just pushing with the language, I suppose, as well, trying to figure out what he's up to. I thought this was a good chapter for language for both Frank's writing. There's some really nice touches. The sharply silver light of noon poured through the clerestory windows. You know, this kind of thing. Um, there's some interesting words in here. I suppose we're getting dumped with quite a lot of stuff, and he's bringing in, I suppose, aspects of Mesoamerican culture and language here, which is pretty good. Another kind of yet another culture, I suppose, a range of cultures from Middle America coming into June, I think, which is good. It's good fun learning new words and stuff, you know. There's very little action in this book. It's mostly mental and verbal jousting. The chapter is quite captivating. Yeah, I hope there's a few people who find their way back to us. I do apologise. That was my fault. We got cut. But as always with things like this, if we do lose things, we'll pop back on for a wee minute or two, and we'll put the 2 episodes up as episode chapter 6 part 1 and chapter 6 part 2, which is it's a bit of a pity because we were quite near the end of the chapter there. So I do apologise. I suppose we've got the heating all the time as well, and sort of just drinking the old precious fluids. But it's really cold here at the moment. I've got the snow out the window, and because I'm having a wee smoke here, I've got the window open. I've kind of got the heating on. It's kind of one of those. Oh dear, oh dear. But I was out walking the dogs in the snow today. As much as it was really, really cold. It was really, very, very, very pretty around here at the minute, you know. Let me just see where I got to there, folks. If you want to be, I think I'd marked it with a wee pen here. We're quite near the end. Send me away, sire. Just backing up there. Sorry, it was just that little bit about Paul saying, you must teach me this Zensunni. I'm not too sure if we got cut off around here. I'll go to about here. Excuse me. You must teach me this Zensunni way with rhetoric. And the metallic eyes glittered at him for a moment, and then, my lord, perhaps that was what was intended. That's what was intended. To blunt my will with words and ideas, Paul wondered. Well, ideas are most to be feared when they become actions. Send me away, sire. And we're told that this is the wee bit I think is quite important, and it was Duncan Idaho's voice, full of concern for the young master, not the voice of some kind of ghoul or clone or something. It seems to be the real Duncan Idaho. And again, this response, Paul felt trapped by that voice. He couldn't send that voice away, even when it came from a ghola. Paul says, you will stay and will both exercise caution. So here's that Atreides trait again. And we're told that Hayt bowed in submission, and Paul glanced up at the spy hole, eyes pleading for Alia to take the gift off his hands and ferret out its secrets. Gholas were ghosts to frighten children. He never thought to know one. To know this one, he had to set himself above all compassion, and he wasn't certain he could do it. So there we go. I think he's unable to be. I think that's that suggestion again that the purpose of the ghola is he can't be objective about this because of who it is. Duncan, where was Idaho in this shape to measure flesh? Pardon me. And he said, it wasn't flesh. It was a shroud in fleshy shape. So it's a weakness here. Again, this weakness that can be exploited by his enemies. We're told that Idaho lay dead forever on the floor of an Arakeen cavern. His ghost stared out of metal eyes. 2 beings stood side by side in this revenant flesh. One was a threat with its force and nature hidden behind unique veils. We're told that closing his eyes, Paul allowed old visions to sift through his awareness. He sensed the spirits of love and hate spouting there in rolling sea from which no rock lifted above the chaos. And there's those kind of sea metaphor there again. We've had the fish, all of this kind of stuff. But again, no more. I suppose not is the point I'm trying to make is it's not desert metaphors, if you like. Again, no place at all from which to survey turmoil. So he sensed the spirits of love and hate spouting there in a rolling sea from which no rock lifted above the chaos. And again, I think that this is the time, currents, if you like, for want of a better word. And Paul asked the question to himself here, Why has no vision shown me this, Duncan Idaho? What concealed time from an oracle? And the answer is other oracles, obviously. Paul opened his eyes and asked, Hayt, do you have the power of prescience? And Hayt says, no, my lord. And we're told sincerity spoke in that voice. I get all about the voice, I suppose, here. It was possible the ghola didn't know he possessed this ability, of course, but that hamper his ability. Sorry, that hamper his working as a mentat. What was the hidden design? And here we get this, I suppose, just heading to the end of this chapter. But these old visions that Paul's accessing, he allowed these old visions to sift through his awareness. We're told the old visions surged around Paul. Would he have to choose the terrible way? Distorted time hinted at this ghola in that hideous future. Would that way close in upon him no matter what he did? Disengage, disengage, disengage. The thought told in his mind. I've made a wee question here on the page. The terrible way that's described here, I've written at the top of the page, that's the heading for my notes here. So the old vision surged around Paul. Would he have to choose the terrible way? Distorted time hinted at this ghola in that hideous future. So whatever the terrible way is, this hideous future, it's something that I've written down that something. This is something that Paul has seen. It's an old vision. And the question I've written down is the terrible way the plot of the novel that we're reading now? If you see what I mean, the end result of what happens. And I suppose we, in relation to Chani and everything like that, is this the terrible thing that Paul's trying to avoid? Is this going to be the thing that ultimately he knows he has to do? And I suppose it beggars the question: Does he? We were talking about in relation to Chani, I think, in the previous. Does he know? Is this the thing that he's seen and he just doesn't want to kind of acknowledge? So I've asked the question: is the terrible way what's actually going to happen in the novel? Which would be pretty terrible from Paul's point of view, I suppose. And I've put, if this is the case, then Paul knows this. And then I've also written, so Alia knows this too. Is that a question mark? Unless you got me wondering again, And we end kind of where we started with Alia. In her position above Paul, we're told she sat with her chin cupped in her left hand, staring down at the ghola like this. A magnetic attraction about this Hayt reached up to her. Tleilaxu restoration had given him his youth, an innocent had given him his youth an innocent intensity. Let me just check if I've read that right. It sounds like my dodgy handwriting again, folks. Tleilaxu had given him youth an innocent intensity. Yeah, well, it's me writing in an extra word. There we go. Hang on. There we go. I'll read that again one more time, folks. Sorry. Tleilaxu restoration had given him youth, an innocent intensity which called out to her. She understood Paul's unspoken plea. When oracles failed, one turned to real spies and physical powers. She wondered, though, at her own eagerness to accept this challenge. She felt a positive desire to be near this man, perhaps to touch him. He's a danger to both of us, she thought. And I've just written, yes, right next to it. And we've hit the end of our chapter. And goodness gracious, I do apologize about the break in there of all the places to have. What a great chapter. Really just... as we talk about the inversion of Dune, but it kind of does begin with once more the drama begins. But this it's fantastic the way this kicks in, and we have it all. We've got intrigue, we've got spying, we have this gift, this feigned gift. There's a manipulation within that. We have this major character brought back from the dead, and the shock and impact that this character brings and its purpose is a weapon. It seems that Alia, from the minute this character opens his mouth, if I'm not mistaken, falls in love with him, and quite possibly is imprinted by him. And so in response, once more, this is how I am called my Lord Hayt, is the first thing that Hayt says here. And Alia, in her dark spy hole, trembled. It was Idaho's voice, a quality of sound so precise, she sensed it imprinting her cells. The same voice, with its earnest concern for the young master. Send me away, sire. And it was Duncan Idaho's voice, full of concern for the young master. The response from Paul is that he felt trapped by that voice. He couldn't send that voice away, even when it came from a ghola. So there's an impact on both the Atreides here, both on Paul and Alia. And they're both kind of shaken to their core. Who was it pointing out temptation there? Was it? Let me just back up a wee bit. We've lost that. It's from the previous feed. I think it might have been Cynthia. Was it somebody or Babs possibly talking about temptation? The both of them being tempted, and even that temptation in the very last point of Alia's thoughts here, where she says she felt a positive desire to be near this man, perhaps to touch him. We've got both, in a funny sense, whatever the nature. We could even call it maybe stage one of the nature of this weapon, this trap. It's definitely had an effect on our two main protagonists here. And again, as I was saying, folks, for those of us who's been on down the road with the 6 Dune books, there's another thing there that kind of just shouts, hey, the whole sexual imprinting and the use of Duncan Idaho to do such a thing in later books, etc. That kind of sort of sexual power that comes with the honored matres and all of that stuff, and that exists with the Bene Gesserit, I suppose. I think that, I'm left wondering, has Alia been sexually imprinted by Duncan Idaho? And I suppose that possibly that she's aware of it, I think. Has Paul been imprinted in some way? I suppose it seems that almost that how to tie up these two people with their abilities, that how to block Alia's mind, if you like, how to get to Alia is through a sort of sexual awakening. For Paul, it's almost how would we put it? I suppose it's an emotional attachment to the past. It's almost like an intellectual awakening in a sense to how do I deal intellectually with this problem, and that he cannot seem to be objective in his thinking, if that makes sense, and that's the weakness there. It's really interesting. And again, what is the terrible way here? How much do they know, and how much is Paul aware of what's been going on the route to this whole thing? And I suppose ultimately the tragedy with Chani and so on. But is this the terrible way? Is this the route that he's got to take, the one that he's avoiding the most? I suppose ultimately we all know what that is. Let me see if I can catch up with your comments, folks. And once again, very sorry for anybody who's joining us. Sorry, I accidentally got us cut off there. That was my fault this time. So I do apologize, and I'll set up a new set of title cards and copy the explanation, etc. into this, and we'll put it up as part 2 and part 1. Excuse me. Well, there we go. But I'm glad we got this done, and I'm glad we got a wee video up as well. I've got loads of dental work up ahead soon. But yes, indeed, it's a great chapter, isn't it? There's some really good writing in it. I think the setup of the room, the spying, the way Edric's treated by Paul's quite amusing. I think he's just almost off you go. And the little drop that we have Gaius Helen Mohiam in prison, which we're going to follow with as well in the next chapter. We're getting the Dune Tarot being dropped on as a form of an oracular device used to muddy oracular vision, something that can work against and for the Atreides, I suppose. So there's the dualistic nature of these kind of prescience, isn't there, and the ways that it can be countered. Let me see if I can catch up with your comments, folks. And again, so I hope you all made it back. Let me just see. Mm-hmm. So Chaya just was saying that there's very little action in this book. It's mostly mental and verbal jousting. This chapter is quite captivating. I think an awful lot going on here, but yeah, I think it really has given the story a good kick forward, and it is interesting when we consider the powers of our characters, our heroes. And especially in light of what we've been learning about, how Paul's empire is looking at him, etc. Paul and Alia's role in the jihad. But in particular, vision, I suppose, really the big things to pay attention to. I thought in this chapter were, I suppose, vision and sight, and eyes in particular, and also voice, and what is said and what's meant. And we've got the introduction, I suppose, of a few ideas, and I suppose we get to see a guild steersman up close, bringing a gift. Excuse me. All sorts of little ideas being introduced, and of course our axolotl tanks for our schlotl tanks. I've got to get used to that. I think I like the fact. Yeah, it's good to learn a new pronunciation or correct something like that, isn't it? Going to be a big mystery in the Dune series. So we've got lots of little things being set sail here, I think. I suppose the thing about not all of our mysteries are solved, but the mystery of the axolotl tanks and the nature of the Bene Tleilaxu is are mysteries that will ultimately be resolved way, way, way down the line. 4 or 5 books away, I think. 3 or 4, maybe, sorry. Hayt doesn't directly answer Paul's question, says Chai, of how Hayt is meant to destroy Paul, unless the idea of tempering metal is the answer, leaving Paul weakened by leaving him unquenched mentally. I thought that was kind of like a subtle threat, almost in a way. Strong decisions. So Paul says, I came to this position by strong decisions. In response to that, strong decisions temper a man's life. Temper, I suppose to give it balance, but one can take the temper from fine metal by heating it and allowing it to cool without quenching. So one can remove that balance from fine metal. As in that something else can be tempered like yourself, like fine metal can be tempered by heating it and allowing it to cool. Take out the balances that make the blade a good thing, I suppose. And it's not only as Zensunni, I suppose, well, as Paul puts it, Zensunni prattle, but it has coming from Idaho, it's got the suggestion of sword making, doesn't it? And the idea that I suppose Duncan is an improved sword. Hayt, sorry, is an improved sword, if you like. And we have again the question, I suppose, why the mechanical eyes? Why? And I suppose the idea that he's, the idea that the fish taking the bait, etc. But there's all sorts here. Sorry, I'm just looking at this and just always been notes and yeah, an introduction of some kind of symbols, some kind of obvious symbols, etc. Some to be associated with the throne itself and with Paul's crown, his rule. and lots of questions to be asked about what is this Duncan Idaho thing? What is this Hayt? What's its purpose? That it is a weapon that's to be used against Paul, and that there's I suppose, as Chai is saying, a sort of vagary to its answers within the, what's the truth hidden inside these Zensunni kind of statements and, prattle. As Paul doesn't seem too impressed by the philosophy, though. I think it's kind of interesting. But Paul's thinking that this is to divert and display, that this is the point of this gift. What Hayt suggests is otherwise. And that sort of makes Paul shift his thinking about moving up into a kind of mentat mode, doesn't he? In a funny way. They both need more data. But, to blunt my will with ideas, is it just to put... That would be the sort of thing that would work with me. You could just fill my head with ideas. If you see what I mean, I'd be easily diverted, And yeah, I suppose the realization that he is dangerous, he's aimed at more than one of them, I suppose. The other thing that you really get from this chapter is that, for me, is how much of Paul and Alia's thinking is the same, but there's very slight differences. And you very get that Paul and Alia, it's kind of the children of Leto, this kind of thing. But yes, the terrible way, the Dune Tarot, and a certain, as we were talking about light and certain things being presented in a certain light within this chapter, if you like. I got the sense of a bit of a religious sense to the authorship, if you like. Which I thought was interesting. There were just things that I thought were that's a bit obvious, and especially with the description of, is it Paul learning to fly a hop, thought there as if they were his own wings or something like this. It was kind of, giving him a kind of a, I don't know, kind of a religious feel to him again, I suppose. So this Hayt speaks of Paul's isolation in the reception hall. How it takes him away from all others. Maybe this can be woven into the tempering image. How can a low man be tempered by another? Babs is saying, terrible way, golden path. Terrible way, destruction of humanity the golden path presents. Yeah, quite possibly. It's the way he's got to go, and ultimately the way he goes it has to be the golden path, doesn't it? It's the thing that he must tread so carefully. And as much as it might prevent the destruction of humanity, what it'll cost him, I suppose. And the way that I think ultimately that Paul will look at it is that it costs him his humanity. And that, well, that's where we go back with Paul later, is that it's the price that he's not prepared to pay ultimately is that price. He's not the price. I suppose it's interesting. He is prepared to pay in certain people's lives, but he's not prepared to pay with his own humanity. And ultimately, that's the difference between, him and Leto, isn't it? Leto the second is that he is prepared to pay with his humanity. He's prepared to give it up. And another golden path ensues. Could the golden path, says Cha, be the terrible way he couldn't do it himself and his son ends up following it into wormhood? Perhaps Paul's vision of the golden path, taking of the worm skin, says Babs, deeply involved that ghola. Babs saying Paul's visions are like Galadriel's mirror. Lord of the Rings, the vision shows what may be unless they step off their path to prevent it. Paul prevented it by allowing it for Leto to do. We're going to have to get there, aren't we, to that conversation between the two of them, and ultimately later on Leto's criticism of Paul, I think. But I always think that Paul follows the golden path up to a point, and then he steps off it. And that whenever Leto takes it over, it becomes his path now, and that it changes whatever direct. I think Paul can see possible outcomes, but there are things that he didn't want to do. I think they include having his body enshrined, this kind of thing, the way he kind of did with his own father. I'm looking forward to getting to it. It'll be good to refresh the memory, if you like. But we have to. But yeah, that's a good point. I suppose Galadriel's Mirror, Lord of the Rings, the vision shows what may be unless they step off their path to prevent it. It's a form of oracle, isn't it? And you've also got the Palantir in the Lord of the Rings as well. They're kind of like scrying devices, aren't they? It's interesting that I suppose that does inform how certain characters think. Saruman has a Palantir, doesn't he? And who else? Oh, it's the Steward of Gondor has one, doesn't he? It's what drives him mad, I think. Interesting. I was sort of thinking about a few things in relation to the three different books, I suppose, that we tend to consider together from the 60s. These ones that Dune, The Lord of the Rings, and the other one would be Strange in a Strange Land, which I haven't read in ages, and I've got myself a new copy. I think about reading it soon. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities to the three books. I was wondering about just what you were saying about that, Babs. I'm trying to think, is there something similar in Strange in a Strange Land as well? But China saying Leto and Ganima don't consider Paul as really Fremen. If Paul had executed the GP into Wormhood, the Golden Path into Wormhood, it would have been very different. Fremen ideals permeate Leto's thinking in God Ember. Yeah, he doesn't. That's the thing. He really doesn't. He really does point out that that Paul is not a Fremen. And I think we were saying about that the other week, possibly, China. But the question is, can we ask the same question about Alia? And Alia is born on Arrakis, and knows nothing else but being, I think Alia is a Fremen. But if we look at it from Leto's point of view, and Ganima's, Paul is not, I'm really looking forward to that, to be honest with you. As I said, none of it's that fresh, but especially when we got stuff like this. This chapter was really good fun. I really enjoyed reading this chapter. Quite enjoyed making the notes on it as well, trying to figure out some of the words and stuff. Got me scribbling. I got drawing with this one, which I don't always do. And it was just, here we've got some of the big concept stuff, some of the big ideas in Dune here. And of course the Duncan Idaho Hayt character, we're going to see, we're already got the seeds of evolution in technologies and drugs, etc. here, but this character we're going to see this character evolve all the way through the Dune series. And it's nice to be back at the beginning with him, just to see his arrival, etc., and the whole purpose of it. I don't think any of the Duncan Idahos after this have the metallized. Hayt is quite a unique one, isn't he? And he'll be around for a bit. But and then we get, I suppose, a whole string of them over time, and then the God Emperor's Duncans, and then we get the Duncans from. I suppose the very end of the last two books, I suppose, where we take that kind of the idea of Duncan Idaho all the way, and we get a bit. There's little things in this chapter I just thought were great, and really got me wondering. Having a wee bit of, I suppose, foreknowledge. Some of us do. Really got me thinking about the story, which is great, and not just what's going on here, but got me thinking way down the line, and got me thinking back to Dune. And it got, in terms of stuff that happened in Dune, it got me thinking, was all about Dr. Yui again. And just got me thinking that if Dr. Yui was a Tleilaxu ghola, then the whole plan within plan is in Dune that we're not really aware of and was part of someone else's plan might be answered there by the fact that it was a Bene Tleilax plan. Which is is my personal big mystery in Dune, So it just got me all over the place. Pardon me, and so we managed to get an excuse to dig out the Dune Encyclopedia as well. We've kind of got a love story going here as well, with Alia and Hayt, star-crossed lovers, this kind of thing. And it's good. Yeah, I think these characters are going to be very interesting, and certainly Hayt as Duncan Idaho, if you like, becomes a very, very interesting character compared to what he is really in the first book, in Dune. He's just kind of a standard Atreides hero amongst heroes, if you like, but and the idea that Paul's surrounded by heroes and is taught by heroes. But it's an interesting thing to bring a character back if you're an author like this, rather than just say creating something new. But I suppose the whole point about bringing this character back from the dead works on many, many different levels with this, and really does tie into questions about cloning and manipulation of DNA and all sorts of things. And we're told that the Tleilaxu are happy to do with anything pretty much they like, and that they're basic raw material seems to be human flesh, So there's, what's this all about, And of course, if we think about as much as we've talked about the face dancers and the mystery of the axolotl tanks, the Bene Tleilax are kind of almost a male opposite to the Bene Gesserit's female sisterhood, and they're kind of represent different aspects of human evolution, if you like, in certain ways. And the shrouds of, I suppose, whereas the Bene Gesserit were the shroud of religion, but are really into politics. I think that the Bene Tleilax wear the shroud of being scientific amoralists, but are in fact really, really religious. I think is kind of interesting. Excuse me. But yeah, don't consider Paul as really friendly. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting to that. But yeah, it's again, sorry for losing a whole bunch of it there, folks, but I think it's a cracking chapter. I really enjoyed it. We're piling headlong into the book. We're up to my copy. We're up to page 86, chapter 7. Where we're going to start next time. Truth suffers from too much analysis. And I do agree. You can always read too much into things, can't you? But and that's going to be quite a nifty wee chapter. That's not too bad for me to do. So yeah, it's a good wee tight novel, I think. Dune Messiah. I really do enjoy it. I've always enjoyed reading it. I'm enjoying it. Looking at it in this detail, and definitely just a very good chapter for kicking things off in this. As we say, there's not loads and loads of action in this book, but it's dramatic and melodramatic, and it's an intrigue, isn't it? It's not quite the same animal as Dune. That kind of runs very much with that kind of buildings Roman, big sweeping epic adventure story. This is much more focused within the closed world of, I suppose, the politics of Arrakis, etc., and it's very Machiavellian, very skullduggery, all this kind of thing. Still being framed, as I like to point, within the idea of the psychotic family novel, But there we go. Yeah. Well, listen, folks. Sorry about the wee cut off there. I think we've been on here for about an extra 39-40 minutes, so that'll add on to the program. I'll put up another title card and set this back up as part 2. So apologies to anybody who we lost there. Doesn't usually happen. Just a bit of clumsiness on my part, so I do apologize. And hopefully we'll get back up and running with the next chapter at the same time next week, which seems to be working for us at the moment. So we'll be doing Truth Suffers from Too Much Analysis, Ancient Fremen saying from then onwards. And we're going to have, yes, indeed, it's going to be quite a good. We're going to have a look at Irulan, the Reverend Mother, Gaius Helen Mohiam, who's been arrested, and what's she up to, etc. So really looking forward to it and enjoying it. And yes, indeed. Oh my God, we're making good progress, aren't we? So let's see. I'm hopefully, all being well, I've got a few dental appointments, etc. over the next few weeks, but they're all kind of the Friday mornings after I do this kind of wee show. So I've got that to look forward to tomorrow. But in the meantime, folks, I'll wrap up and hopefully I'll get this the title cards sorted out and we'll get a part 1 and part 2 up so that we can get that tidied up for the Dune Messiah book club. And otherwise, I'll actually say good night to you all and take it easy and look after yourselves no matter where you are. Here it's pretty snowy for a lot of you there. We've got a lot of snow here too, so keep yourselves warm. And we'll hopefully see you on Thursday at 9 p.m. GMT for Chapter 7 of Dune Messiah. So thanks very much for joining us, folks. Really appreciate it, as always. Look after yourselves. Sorry about the bit of a blip, and we'll see you next time. All the very best. Take care. Good night. Bye-bye. Thank you all. Sleep sweet, says Babs. Good night, folks.